Welcome to the podcast. This podcast is entitled Kimmel's List. That my other podcast where I was commenting on Jimmy Kimmel being stupid and talking about the election. So then he gives this list, and I thought, oh, that might be a good place to look for or analyze the different issues, and we'll see how it goes. So he says it was a terrible night for half of his audience. Yeah, it was more like 2/3 of your audience voted for Trump, dude. It's not like it was close. Like a ton. I guess not 2/3, but it was a beating. She took a beating. She's a horrible candidate. They did a horrible job in the presidency. No one denies that, except morons like him that don't know anything. And the people could see it, and they want something different. So he talks about it was a horrible night for women. I assume he means abortion. Doesn't he realize that abortion is a state issue now? Trump has nothing to do with it. He has as much to do with that as he does your local speed limit or the state income tax or state education funding. He has nothing to do with it. But see, Kamala lied to everybody and said, we're going to get a law passed. No, you're not. The Supreme Court said you can't do that anymore. It's not a federal issue. And it's not. It's not in the Constitution. You can't derive it from you can't infer it from anything in the Constitution. It's ridiculous. But morons like him got brainwashed into it, and he shouldn't know better because he's not that smart or not that informed, or he doesn't want to get informed. I don't know. I feel bad for women who got brainwashed by this and manipulated into thinking that they're going to be forced to have a baby now. But that's just stupid. I don't know what he's talking about there. Children, he said, it's a horrible night for children. I guess sometimes Republicans want to cut off food stamp funding, which is stupid. But I don't know. What did Trump do to children? He didn't cut SNAP. He didn't cut anything for children. So I don't know what the heck he's talking about with that. He was just rambling, you know. He said, for the hundreds of thousands of immigrants who make this country work. Yeah, it's unfortunate that people like him exploit illegal immigrants and pay them nothing to be their nannies and their housekeepers because they can get away with it because these people are desperate and they're exploiting them. Yeah, immigrants don't make this country work any more than normal people make this country work, or citizens of this country make it work. Just because you're exploiting them doesn't mean they might have to work harder, and they might have less worker protections because they can't complain and they can't strike and they can't go to the union. And maybe that's what he's talking about. And so on the one hand, he's saying, oh, you guys are so awesome. And on the other hand, they're being exploited by all the rich people who want cheap nannies. These people are disgusting. Not the immigrants, the elites. And what about all the people who are exploited with the drug trade and the human trafficking and all that crazy stuff that goes on that we all know about? We all know about that. You're contributing to that if you're encouraging illegal immigrants to come here. How else are they going to get here? The only way they can get here is across that border, and the cartels have control of the border, and horrible things happen to those people. And you're contributing to that mess. He said it was a horrible night for healthcare. What did Trump do about healthcare? Yeah, he and the Republicans tried to ban or get rid of Obamacare at the beginning, and John McCain stopped it. What did they do after that? They didn't do anything. Healthcare is fine. I mean, it's not as good as it could be, but that was not a Trump goal to change healthcare. He's just spouting off stuff. It was a horrible night for everything. Oh, the world's coming to an end. Like, what are you talking about? Said it was a horrible night for climate. Yeah, the climate doesn't care one way or the other what Trump is. What are you talking about? All of the stuff they want to do won't amount to anything. It won't do anything. Even if this whole thing was true, it won't do anything to the climate. But they're in this religion that tells them that if we just do these things and we pray to Gaia, then everything will be fine. When all of those things don't even matter. That's what, is it Bjorn Lomborg? Is that his name? That's what he's saying. We're going to spend all these hundreds of billions of dollars on all this stupid cap and trade nonsense, and it's not going to do anything. So he's just a drone on that. Anyway, he says it's a horrible night for science. Is he talking about RFK? I don't know. Trump went along with all of Fauci's crap. He went along with the vaccines. He still hasn't denounced the vaccines. So what are you talking about science? Like, it's just this weird concoction of things that Trump is against everything that's nice and good. It was a horrible night for journalism. Are you calling CNN and MSNBC journalism? Are you calling anything that anyone does anymore journalism, except for like Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger? They actually do journalism. There's nobody on his side that does journalism. They're just running around with their hair on fire, gossiping. That's all they do anymore. No one's investigating anything. They just say, we heard from a source, and then they talk about it for 10 minutes. And then they talk about, well, here's another story we heard. That's not journalism. That's just gossip. These people have lost their minds. He said it was a horrible night for justice. I don't know what he's talking about. A horrible night for free speech. That's pretty weird coming from someone on the side of the aisle who wants to ban misinformation, whatever that is, and wants to monitor what everyone says, and who the side that tried to create a Ministry of Truth in the White House. What? You don't care about free speech? You guys banned everybody who questioned anything about COVID on YouTube and on Twitter. He was just emoting, I guess. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for him because he's a pompous jerk. But I don't know. He said it's a horrible for poor people. Like all the people who became poor because of inflation, because of Biden and your side. How are they going to be worse off under Trump? Because Trump's an evil rich man. He's not Romney. This isn't the country club Republicans anymore. He doesn't. But the problem is they don't listen. They don't pay attention. They just sit around in their little high school clique and talk to each other about how stupid we all are while the world passes them by. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're in a bubble. A horrible night for the middle class. What middle class? We've been wiped out by the last 40 years of sending all the jobs overseas and inflation and screwing over regular people. But the stock market's great. Okay, that matters to regular people. That really helps regular people. Wages are flat for 40 years. When adjusted for inflation, but the stock market's great. Okay, look at the GDP, man. The GDP is awesome. Okay, how does that help me? Well, I know all the arguments. It's so dumb. Come on. It was a horrible night for seniors on Social Security. What did Trump do about Social Security? He didn't do anything. He never talked about cutting Social Security. Other Republicans have, because they don't want to fork the money over to pay for it. And, whatever, that's not going to happen. Unless austerity comes and then we're forced to start cutting stuff. But I think there's some Republicans who would throw the rich people out in the street, or the the people on Social Security out in the street before they have their taxes raised, though. Let's be honest. Our allies, it was a horrible night for our allies in the Ukraine. Dude, you fight alongside allies. You don't use them to punish your enemies as pawns. And that's what we're doing with the Ukrainians. It's despicable and horrible. We're using them to screw Russia like pawns. We're not fighting alongside them. We're not their allies. We had a role to play in causing this mess by pushing NATO, which we should not have done. And, you know, the war is Putin's fault too, or mostly. But you can't just take things out of context. We're fighting to the last Ukrainian. It's horrific what we're doing. We're destroying a society for geopolitical reasons. The Cold War is over. What are we doing? We don't need to be doing this. But people like him are brainwashed and can't listen to a YouTube video from Dr. Sachs or Mersheimer or what's his name, Colonel McGregor, right? Go find something out other than what CNN told you. I don't understand this one. He's still drinking the Kool-Aid on this, and so are a ton of people, I guess. He said it's a horrible night for NATO. What about NATO? That we're going to make them pay up and actually defend themselves? Right? There's no, the way Trump talks about it sometimes and other people talk about it, it's like dues. It's like they're not paying into the UN. That's not what it's like. The agreement is every country will pay at least 2% of its GDP on its military. Think about it. Some of those countries aren't even paying 2% of their military, of their budget on their military. They're just happy to have us defend them. They don't care. Think about it. 2%. We spend about 6%, but our economy is enormous compared to theirs. So NATO was just a way for us to defend those countries. That's all it ever was. And then they're just fine with it because then they can spend all their money on social services and look down their noses at us and, oh, you guys don't care about your people and all this. Well, that's partly true, but it's also true that we're spending a lot of our money to defend you while they're paring down their militaries and getting rid of their navies. And it's a joke. They're a joke. NATO's a joke. And so all Trump did was say, hey, if we're going to defend you against Russia, maybe you should stop making deals with them and you should pay at least 2% on your own defense, for crying out loud. I don't think that's too much to ask. So I don't know how Trump's going to be bad for NATO, maybe because the left has drunk the Kool-Aid that he wants to get rid of NATO. No, he just said, dude, why are we paying all these rich countries to defend them? Why do we need to defend all these rich countries? World War II's over. It's been over for a long time. The Cold War's over too. What is this? He said it was a bad night for democracy. Ugh. I guess he means January 6th. Can we just get something straight? Nobody was trying to overthrow the government on January 6th. It was a riot. I don't even know what they were trying to do. Were there some people who wanted to kill some congressman? Maybe. Do you really think if 100,000 Trump supporters wanted to kill some congressmen, they wouldn't have done it? You know how many of them have weapons of war? Right? All of them. You want to see a real insurrection? I don't. So don't call a riot an insurrection. Don't water down the word. All they wanted to do, because we thought there was fraud and there was a lot of evidence of shenanigans. And so it says in the law, because there was a dispute over an election in 1876. And they said, how are we going to avoid this again? And they said, if a senator and a congressman object to electoral votes from a state when we're counting the electoral votes. If there's one from each house of Congress, then they can object, and we will spend 1 hour in each house hearing the complaints about those electoral votes. And then we'll vote. All they wanted was to have their say. And they started it. It didn't start with a riot. This is so stupid. I was watching it. And Ted Cruz was giving a speech. He said, we should have a commission and review all this stuff. And then the American people will be satisfied. And then Senator Langford got up and he barely started speaking. And then he got interrupted. And somebody came over and said, there's people in the building. And then it all went crazy. And I was like, dude, what's going on? All they wanted to do was have their voices heard for hours on hours and hours and hours. And what would have happened is, for sure, they would have presented their stuff, and then they would have voted, and they would have accepted all the electoral votes. Who knows? Maybe they would have sent some back. And maybe that was a political stunt. I don't think it was, but some people think it was a political stunt. Regardless, guess what they didn't want desperately? To have a bunch of cheating exposed. Right? They really didn't want that. So then they just say, oh, it was an insurrection. They were crazy and they wanted to kill us all. And Trump was trying to overthrow the government and change the election. They weren't trying to change the election. They just wanted to show the world that there was cheating. So they thought. That's all it was. And in a democracy where there's already a law that says you get to do that, then they should have been able to do that. The Democrats always object, but there isn't a senator and a House member. It's just one or the other. I think it's usually just a House member. But we had a bunch of senators who were going to do it. And yeah, maybe just for political reasons. So what? None of us wanted a riot that day. That completely undermined what we were trying to do. No one wanted a riot. We just thought there was cheating. Don't dismiss it by saying, oh, you guys just wanted to overturn the election. No, we love elections. We're the ones who care about elections. And they do too, okay? But if somebody said, oh, your guy won because he cheated, I would want to see evidence. I don't want to win by cheating because then it undermines the whole system. He said it's a horrible night for decency. Yeah, Trump is crass. He's a jerk. It's true. He says crazy stuff. He's kind of toned it down, got to admit. Do you really think those other people aren't crass behind the scenes? Do you really think Clinton is a Boy Scout? We know he's not. Come on. Behind the scenes, you know they're all scum. So our guy is just honest about it. He said it was good. This is who it was good for. Good for Putin. Yeah, because maybe we'll save like 100,000 lives or something by ending this stupid war. Come on. Like, how's it good for Putin? Because he's going to, this was their argument. Oh, people flatter Trump and then okay, maybe that's kind of true, but isn't that diplomacy? Doesn't that work better than sacrificing 500,000 Ukrainians so you can weaken Russia? It's probably not a good idea. Think if good people had been running our country for the last 30 years after the Cold War. Instead of people trying to create an empire and push Russia around, think if we had brought them into our orbit like we did Eastern Europe. Look how much Poland loves us. And now the biggest reason they love us is because they hate Russia. But it's true that Putin asked, hey, what if I was in NATO? What if we were in NATO? Think how much different that would have been if we formed some kind of security agreement with them instead of keeping that at arm's length and pushing them around. We've been bad stewards of the power that was given to us. This thing, what's called the unipolar moment that is over now. We were on top of the world and we could kind of do whatever we wanted. And we weren't good. We didn't do a good job. We had such an opportunity and we blew it. So instead of Putin being against us, arm in arm with North Korea and China, or I mean, with us, you know what I mean. Now he's with North Korea and China. He could have been with us against them, or at least in the middle, kind of like India. We played our cards totally wrong. We overplayed our hand, and we're trying to push people around, and it's not working anymore. And I hate to say it because we've been the good guys. In the Cold War, we were the good guys. I'm sorry if your Marxist professor told you otherwise. He's wrong. Now, were we the perfect guys? No, that's not what I said. We were the good guys, and the Soviets were the bad guys. Is everything that we did what we should have done? No. But overall, were we fighting the good fight and trying to collapse the evil empire of the Soviet Union? Yeah, that was real, and that was what was happening. Since the Cold War, I don't know. Our leaders haven't been doing a good job. He said it was a good night for polio. I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe I just don't know. Maybe whatever. He said it was a good night for Elon Musk. Yeah, what's wrong with Elon Musk? They all hate him now because if you like Trump, you're automatically the devil. Okay. He said it was a good night for all the wriggling brainworms who sold what was left of their souls to bow down to Trump. What? Is he talking about the other people in Silicon Valley? Is he talking about all of us? Is he talking about RFK? I'll take RFK and Tulsi Gabbard any day of the week over any of those clowns. And then he says, we accept the results of elections. We don't riot to overthrow the election. Okay, what if you thought that the election was stolen? What if you saw kind of like a lot of evidence of fake ballots and people hauling coolers into the ballot counting centers? What if all the ballots last Tuesday, all the swing states stopped voting at the same time? And then all of a sudden in the middle of the night, Kamala was winning. Then all of a sudden Trump was winning. What do you know? Yeah, you'd be upset too. And after 6 months of riots and BS about COVID and all the lying, yeah, you'd be upset too. And you wouldn't want to riot, but you would want to be heard. And you would want people to take you seriously and not gaslight you and say, well, you didn't really want it. You just wanted to riot and overthrow the. You don't want to accept the results of an election. We dispute the results of the election. We don't think those were the real results. You guys aren't saying that. If you were, it'd be a different story, and I'd have some sympathy for you, jerk. And then he says, we've been through this once before. This time will be worse, maybe a lot worse. What? So better than the last 4 years? So it's still going to be better than the last 4 years? Because the 2.5 years before, or 3 years before COVID were pretty good. This is so stupid. He says he promises to stop wars and do tariffs on China and crush inflation and cut taxes. Yeah, he did all that stuff the first time he was in. And most of that stuff he can just do the first minutes he's in office. Open up gas. Open up gas production. That'll crush inflation. Got to work with Congress to cut taxes. But that wouldn't be that hard. Doing tariffs, he can just do tariffs. Stop the wars, he can just stop the wars. Biden could have stopped the war a year ago. He could have stopped it before it started, for crying out loud. He could have stopped it at none of those people would have died. And probably Putin would have gotten Crimea. Okay. All this other death and destruction, the eastern part of Ukraine would have still been in Ukraine. If our stupid leaders would have listened and said, look, we don't want to put NATO in Ukraine. We know that makes you mad. We don't need to provoke you. But they thought they could just keep pushing Russia. And Russia finally said no. And yeah, they shouldn't be taking that land from Ukraine. But they're like, well, we sacrificed how many hundreds of thousands of our guys? I think we're just going to keep this. Because it's mostly Russian, or at least a good portion Russian anyway. And the Crimea is mostly Russian. So, yeah, he could just do all that stuff tomorrow. I think they're going to be surprised. And the problem is they're never going to have to eat their words. It's so aggravating. And he says he's going to have to reach across the aisle. And then he's like, remember when Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi wanted to do infrastructure with him? Yeah, they wouldn't let him do infrastructure. He wanted to do infrastructure, but they didn't want to give him credit for that. And Trump actually wanted to do infrastructure, not a boondoggle like we got. Not $1 trillion in giveaways to unions and a slush fund for Buttigieg to hand out political favors in the form of, I guess, I don't know, what was it? Charging stations? There should be like every single bridge in this country should be renovated by now. $1 trillion? What a scam that was. And then he says, make sure, put me in a jail cell with Taylor Swift. Like Trump's going to round up all his enemies. Dude, remember 4 years ago when he was in power? Like, what planet are these people on? They're the ones who are weaponizing the justice system. They're the ones who tried to throw Trump in jail. And they all know it was political. Get out of here. So stupid. Everyone could see right through it. We're not that dumb. And then at the end, I stopped watching it. He says, how many of you, by raise of hands, have don't talk to a family member anymore because of this election? Only a few. Dude, how many of those are because of the Trumpster? And how many of those are because of the crazy Democrat who can't believe that their relative is voting for the evil Trump? Dude, they're the ones. You can't make a huge generalization, but look around. They're the ones who are pretty unhinged about it. And look, I'll admit I was not that bad, but I was kind of unhinged about Obama. But dude, these guys, this Trump derangement syndrome, this is real. They've lost it. So anyway, there's Kimmel's little list and my kind of rebuttal. Sorry if it's kind of cranky. I don't know. I don't know if these people are going to wake up. I don't think we should re-educate them like Hillary thinks we should be re-educated. But it looks like a lot of people woke up. I'm just surprised. I guess I'm not surprised that Kimmel didn't wake up because he's just in a bubble. But I think some regular people are waking up. Thank you for listening.